Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk. I'd like to acknowledge that I speak from the land of the Camaragal people, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and to any Aboriginal people who may be with us. So, tonight I will be addressing the subject of vanquishing your demons. And, in ancient cultures, shamans learned to name that which you feared as a practical way to begin to have power over whatever was feared. Naming the difficulties we encounter brings clarity and understanding and can unlock and free the energy that is inevitably caught up in them. To name our experience is the first and a very important step in bringing them to a watchful, conscious attention. And it allows us to investigate our lives and inquire into whatever aspect or issue is presenting for us. And so what those ancient shamans were doing, people now do in their personal development work. It might be in therapy, it might be a path of spiritual growth, whatever it is. Might be in a recovery program. But, in Buddhism, these dark or shadow aspects of us, as Carl Jung named them, are personified as Mara. And Buddha gave each problem or experience a simple name. When it presented, saying, "I know you, Mara. And this is a mind filled with anger." Or this is a mind filled with joy. Acknowledging each state as it arose and enabling it to pass away quickly. When we acknowledge, the key thing here is to acknowledge what it is that I'm experiencing and to be able to put it into words for myself. It's also really good to put it into words and tell somebody else, to share it. Only need to share it with one other person. And something quite wonderful happens when we do this. So acknowledging each state, emotional state or whatever it is that I'm experiencing, acknowledging this enables it to come and go. So we observe. We learn to become this observer of our feelings. We notice where it is in the body and what that feels like. Is it a hot feeling? Is it a cold feeling? Is it a shivery feeling? Is it painful? Is it a sharp pain? Because it will be somewhere in the body. And it's really good to identify that, because as we journey along the path, our spiritual path or our path of personal growth, being able to have very, very clear awareness of what is going on for me, because it's not just in my mind. Yes, we feel with our mind, but we also feel with our body. And so what is in our mind will also be in our body. And it's really good because as we I learn to not be reactive, it's very helpful when you're in a situation where, say, you're having a big reaction to something or someone. It may not be appropriate necessarily. We're not always in a situation to say, hey, I'm feeling such and such as a result of what you just said to me or whatever. It's not always appropriate. Sometimes it is appropriate, very appropriate, but it's not always. And so it's really good to notice what's going on in the body, because the body does not lie. The mind rationalizes and plays games, but the body doesn't lie. And, when you get that sensation in your gut because you're having someone just humiliated you or whatever, to feel that, and then you can say, I'm actually really angry about this, and you then are in a position to respond. So what we need to do is learn to respond rather than react. Reacting can get us into trouble. Having an appropriate response is part of our spiritual growth. So in the space of such awareness, understanding grows naturally. And as I clearly sense and name my experience, I can notice what brings it about and how I can respond to it in a full and skillful way. So all of us have this thing called ego. And ego is defense mechanisms. That's what it is. It's defense mechanisms and deflective and avoidance strategies. And it can take up a great deal of space and energy in our kind of beingness, in our being space, and in our lives. There's no doubt about it. It runs our lives. And so the Buddha described the 5 most common difficulties as chief hindrances to awareness and clarity. And by the way, if anybody wants to stop me, I do regard this as an interactive session. So please, if you want to stop me and ask a question or get something clarified, please do. So these 5 most common hindrances he described as grasping, anger, sleepiness, restlessness, and doubt. Very interesting choice. So there are, of course, many others. He regarded those as the main ones. And these demons can besiege you in multiple combinations. It may not just be one. And it was also the Buddha who named desire and attachment as the root of all human suffering. Grasping and wanting are possibly the most painful aspects of desire. People with addictions can especially relate to these. The bottomless pit of inner hunger and voidedness. That's what addiction is. A bottomless pit. One's too many and 1,000's not enough. So the part of me that wants is never content. Thinking that if only I had that something more, I'd be happy. And it would make me content. That special relationship, that job, that career, that warmer climate, maybe a colder climate, more money, and more food, a new car, a nicer home, another baby, a few more kids, and then I would be fulfilled. And so for the wanting part of me, what I have now is never enough. And this part is called the hungry ghost. For it will never experience fullness or enoughness. The addict knows it well, and I am not referring to the stereotyped street alcoholic or addict. We find it in the boardrooms and upper echelons of corporations, business, government, multinationals, as well as on factory floors and hospital departments, etc. Power and control are just as addictive for some as heroin for the guy dealing on the street. And so the fact is that wanting creates tension. Wanting is painful. So if you note the location of it in your body, if you're wanting something, is it in your stomach? Is it in your heart? Is it in your throat? Is it in your gut? Wanting arises from a sense of incompleteness and longing. A feeling that I am empty and I'm not whole. Some part of me is split off. It's gone missing. I feel fragmented and disconnected. Wanting is also an intoxicant that stops me from seeing clearly. It switches off my awareness. I can get so consumed with my wanting that, I'm just not aware of what's really going on at all. If I do manage to fulfill my wanting, what happens? It brings on more wanting. In substance recovery, we actually call it the wanting disease. The need or desire that can never be satisfied. How draining this is. How tiring. And what does it turn my life into? A peaceless vacuum of dissatisfaction and emptiness. It was George Bernard Shaw who said, there are two great disappointments in life. Not getting what you want and getting what you want. When we do get something, a moment of satisfaction is felt, though not from the pleasure, but from the stopping of the grasping. So if you are wanting, feel wanting carefully. It is in your mind. If it is satisfied, notice what happens just after it ends. Then notice what follows. The issue of wanting and desire is indeed profound. How often are your desires misplaced? An obvious example is using food to replace love that we long for. It's a very common thing. Feeding the hungry heart. Someone wrote a book called Feeding the Hungry Heart. How much of our surface desire arises from a deeper wanting in our being, from an underlying loneliness or fear. I mean, usually these things actually come from our childhood, stuff that, dependency needs that were not met before we were 8. What is the busyness disease all about? Well, it distracts a person from uncomfortable feelings, such as depression, anxiety, guilt, shame, resentment. Busyness is used by people in all walks of life to cover up depression. It's very, very common. In the early years of spiritual practice, the wanting mind may become more intense. And if we're having deep meditation, and look, the more deeply we meditate, the more this will happen. Because I was saying, I know, a week or 2 or 3 ago, that the vibrational frequency in deep meditation is 9.8 hertz. And it is this frequency that heals, but it also opens a can of worms. And in order to heal, we have to open the can of worms. And we have to let the worms out of the can. So, as layers of distraction are removed through meditation, I may experience powerful urges for something, for food, for sex, for contact with others, maybe ambition. It may be some kind of need for power over others. So when this occurs, people can feel their spiritual life has gone awry. But this is the necessary process of unmasking the grasping mind. I must see it in all its guises so that I learn and become skillful in dealing with it. I must develop awareness and a mature and wise relationship with it. My will must become engaged in a positive way instead of a negative way. Because the fact is, it's not, once we get on a kind of path of spiritual growth or personal growth, we're not going to deal with everything in a year or 2 or 3. It's not going to happen. It's not going. The reality is we'll be dealing with our baggage until almost we leave the body. And hopefully we'll get through it by then. So, and as I've explained to you before, how we cycle through. It's not a linear, nothing is linear. We are not linear beings. We don't function in a linear manner. We are cyclic. Energy moves in cycles. And so we cycle through our issues at more and more refined levels as time goes on and as we grow more in the spiritual sense and the psychological sense. We will deal with things at more and more refined levels over time. So we will revisit these things. And it's really interesting to observe your progress over time. It's something that I have noticed very much in my own path and my own journey, I have to say. So the will is actually really important. And because when the will engages in a positive way, the energy of the will can overcome all obstacles. And this is really worth remembering, because sometimes, you can just think, how long is this going to go on? Feel a bit defeated. I've done it again. I lost it again, or whatever. But the energy of willingness will overcome every single obstacle if I just hang in there. So while painful desire involves greed, grasping, inadequacy, and longing, skillful desire is directed by a positive will to do, directed by love, vitality, compassion, creativity, and wisdom. This is what the growth, the gift of the growth. So meditation switches on my awareness. It also switches on and opens up my heart, my intellect, and my conscience, and opens us to a whole new universe inside, and a deep capacity to see ourselves in the mirror, if we're willing. So if we go deeply into the silence again and again, the truth is revealed. We distinguish the unhealthy parts of us with their desires, and we fill them with light, with awareness of our behaviours and internal, often unexpressed lower order wanting or needs. These parts of us can be understood, helped, and transformed in a loving, compassionate way. It's no good beating yourself up. Beating yourself up, it's great if you're practicing some sort of path that wants to make you just feel bad all the time. But I would have to say it's pretty pointless. There actually is no growth in making yourself feel any worse than you probably do anyway. What I need to learn to do is actually uplift myself, give myself hope, give myself inspiration that I can do this. Yes, I've had a slip, I've had a relapse. I had that moment of forgetfulness, whatever. It happens, and it happens to every single one of us. But beating yourself up is pointless, quite frankly. It's pointless. Just say, okay, rather than doing that, it's, okay, what did I learn from this? What have I learned from this? And what do I need to do to avoid making the same mistake again? The important thing is we must learn, and we learn by having these trips and falls and these moments where we lose our awareness and we make that mistake. This is how I learn. Because, the spiritual path is a high path. And the path to really freeing the self from all of this negativity it requires incredible passion to do this, and stick-with-itiveness. So it's no good saying, oh gosh, this is so hard, I might as well not bother. You don't. That's pointless too. So as we transform ourselves and free ourselves from these old patterns that hold us down, it leads to a much more spontaneous and natural way of being, without struggle and without ambition. It frees up so much of my energy. My life force is freed up because I become unblocked. And as that energy is freed up, that energy is available for my growth. And that is a good feeling. No longer caught up in the cycle of wanting and desire, my understanding of self grows, transforms, and a healthy passion and compassion for myself and my growth will more naturally play a role in directing my entire life. So wisdom, freedom, and joy come to us all naturally as we feel more whole. Now, generally in psychology, the so-called demon of anger is understood to be a secondary emotion arising from either fear or the loss of someone or something that I had or expected or needed or depended on, etc. So a broken attachment may be underneath the anger. We need to recognise and observe our anger. So what is it saying? Psychotherapy is an excellent adjunct. It's meditation. And the choice to invest oneself in a spiritual pursuit or lifestyle, it speeds up the process of working on the self, because meditation works from the inside, psychotherapy works from the outside, and deals with behavioural manifestations of those inner core issues. And as I've said, I'm sure many times, when we meditate, meditation automatically brings up whatever we have been suppressing or repressing. It just comes up. And the more deeply and long-term that we meditate, than the really deep stuff that is so deeply repressed we don't even realise it's there, that comes up. And that's why it takes a long time to do this work on ourselves. So it does require a huge commitment. Freedom is a huge commitment. Complete freedom is a complete commitment. So when we work with anger in meditation, it can make the anger a lot stronger because of this thing that, you know, I'm probably repressing as much of it as I can because, let's face it, anger is not acceptable, particularly if you are a female. Sort of, you know, one of the unwritten rules, social rules, is that it's okay for men to get angry, but it's not okay for women. So all the hurts that I may have swallowed during my life, the images of unjust treatment I have suffered, etc., will emerge into my consciousness from way, way back in my early life and all the way up till now. You know, volcanic rage can arise and just inner tirades. But I must face and understand these forces that have prevented me from living in a fully conscious, truthful and loving way. These demons may be faced over and over again on the journey to wholeness and, I have to say, sanity. Because having a lot of repressed, very, very deep, strong feelings can make you feeling quite insane. And so as we continue to make the unconscious conscious, because this is what we are doing as a meditator, we are making our unconscious conscious. And so we release all the old blocked energies that have held us back and immobilized us for what may be a very, very long time. Gradually, we move from the very heavy layers of darkness in the soul into a newfound lightness of being. So spiritual growth is a huge commitment to myself and is the ongoing work of the soul seeking to become enlightened and complete. Okay. So I'm going to open up now for questions or points of discussion.
I'll go first.
Good on you, Rachel.
All right. So this basically mentioned about overcoming your demons.
Yes.
So in this one particular thing that you mentioned, silence. So in the silence, if we actually get even more angry, then how do we deal with that?
Stay in the silence. Something I discovered many years ago, and I would say going back into the end of the 80s, early 90s, this was something I practiced a lot because I was doing a hell of a lot of work on myself way back when. And I would sit for long periods in meditation, and particularly if I was feeling a desire for something or a need to distract for a need for distraction or whatever. I was just really observing myself at that time. And so one day I had this huge need to distract myself. And I thought, I wonder what that's about. And so rather than act on it, because I was absolutely ready to pick up the phone and act on it, I thought, no, I should go and just sit in meditation and see what happens. And I made this serendipitous discovery by doing that. And the discovery was this, that after some time in meditation, I started to get in touch with a childhood memory. Well, it was an early childhood memory of being humiliated by a school teacher, publicly humiliated. And I was only about 6 when it happened. And the emotion that I experienced, I just literally went back to that experience. The humiliation, the pain of it, the incredible suffering that it gave me for a long time. The unjustness of it. She was, this teacher had power over a 6-year-old. She was using her power to humiliate a 6-year-old, which, as the adult part of me wasn't impressed. And so I got in touch with all of those painful feelings. And what I realised was that memory was coming up, it was surfacing. And that was why I needed to distract myself. If that makes sense. It was subconscious. It had come up it was coming up through the levels of the subconscious into consciousness. But the way ego functions is when something's below consciousness, the ego can sort of knows somehow. And so to stop it coming up, wants to distract me by sending me off on some other experience. And so I just sat. I literally just sat with those feelings, because what else could I do? And I felt all those emotions, and I'm sure I shed a few tears, but I sat there for hours. I actually sat there for about 5 hours. About 5 hours, and it was all gone. The whole thing went. It left me. And so, all that energy that was tied up in those emotional knots from my childhood, the shame that I felt, because she had that humiliation, made me feel really ashamed. So there was a bit there for me to work through and realise and understand and let go of, and just really take care of that little girl inside and, reassure her that she hadn't done anything. It wasn't her, it was the teacher. The teacher was the person who was very, very, very wrong. I hadn't actually done anything. I hadn't done anything. And it was all about her using her power quite incorrectly and really abusively. And so I came out of that meditation feeling really light and really good, and all of that stuff just dissolved. And so what I would say, Ranjula, if you go into the silence and your anger is growing, stay with it. And just sit with it. You're not going to explode. Your head's not going to blow off. Just stay with it and observe where it is in your body. Observe. Allow that tracking back to occur, because a very powerful emotions need to be discharged, not sat on, not pushed back down. And I know that, we live in a society that frowns on anger. We're taught, particularly, in meditation, anger's bad. You should never feel anger, never be angry. Well, guess what? We all feel angry, every single one of us. And it doesn't matter how long you've been on the spiritual path. If you're still in the body, you're probably still feeling anger. And so I need to just sit with it and learn from it, observe it. Where is it in my body? Acknowledge I have all this anger. I'm really angry. What is that connected to? You will get the images. You will get the images of what that anger is connected to. And I would suggest, if it's very deep anger, you're going to go right back into your childhood, early childhood. And someone may need to mute yourself. Thank you. So
thank you for that.
That's my suggestion, Ranjula. And, if you don't feel that it's resolving, you may need to go and talk to a therapist. I think, I have said earlier on, and I'll say it again, that when you're doing a lot of spiritual work on yourself, therapy can be a very useful thing, because then you're dealing with stuff at the more outside level, at the behavioural level. How is the anger manifesting? What am I doing with that anger? How is it playing out in my life and my decisions, my life choices? Because stuff that I'm not particularly conscious or aware of, will be having a huge influence on my life, and I don't even realise it. And so the beauty of therapy is that it helps to make what is subconscious conscious as well. And, dealing with these things with another person is very, very useful. And it means you can deal with things much more quickly. But I'm a great believer in dealing with things from the inside, using meditation, and dealing with them again on the outside, using some form of therapy.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, and journaling is really good too. Journaling your feelings is really, really good.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Keeping a feelings chart. Have I talked about feelings charts before?
No, not yet.
No. If you just get if you want to practice some journaling, just try it. Just try it for a week or two, and see how much more aware you are at the end of that period. It is amazing how much more aware we become through journaling our feelings. And the way you do it is just, if you've got an A4 book, just using the wide view, the landscape, do 3 columns. And in the heading at the first column, you'll have the emotion. And then in the second column, it's what triggered the emotion. And in the third column, how you resolved it. And at the end of each day, you can do your feelings chart before you go to bed or whenever you get the chance. Just spend, 5 or 10 minutes writing it out. Or you can fill it out, in the moment if you're able to. So just, if you're feeling something, write it down. Feeling resentment, feeling angry, feeling happy or joyful or whatever. Just write it down, that emotion. Then what triggered it? I won the lottery, or the boss ignored me when I said good morning to him, so I feel angry, whatever it is. And then how you resolved it, which might be I drank 3 cups of coffee and didn't do any work, or I ate a block of chocolate, or I went for a walk, or, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a functional resolution, just whatever you did to as a result of that feeling. So you can then start to really observe yourself and how you deal with your feelings over a period of a few weeks, then continue. And because bringing, when we write about things, it does really make us consciously aware. And we're then able to, because we need to transform ourselves, and what we're aware of, we can change. What we're not aware of, we can never change. So I need to be very aware of my entire, not only the emotion, but how I deal with it. I might be dealing with it in a really dysfunctional manner. And I might displace it. I might go and kick the dog instead of saying what I need to say to my partner, or I might, go and slam a door instead of saying something that I need to say to my kids. Displaced emotions can cause a lot of problems. Like the boss comes into work in the morning, you can tell he's in a mood, he's angry, or she, and maybe he had an argument with his partner before he came to work or whatever, and everyone gives him a wide berth because they know that he's going to be angry for much of the day, or she. And that is displaced anger. So if I'm feeling angry, I need to deal with it responsibly. It may be that I need to go and confront somebody or some situation and deal with that in a direct way, and then I don't displace that anger onto other situations in my life, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And also journaling, you can go back and look at your notes and see how well you have progressed.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And it's a really good thing to do as well, is to go back and observe over time. I journaled for years and years and years. I'd say probably around about 15, 20 years I used to journal. And it was good because sometimes I'd open an old journal and think, gee, I really have grown, since way back when, because I'm not doing those things anymore. And it's important to acknowledge, I am really making progress. I am able to change. I am able to transform these things. And it's very empowering. And we do need to sort of acknowledge ourselves and that we are getting somewhere. It's really important because it's so encouraging for us to inspire ourselves in that way with our own efforts and our own achievements. So, any other questions or comments?
Yes, I do. Good evening. I think this is fabulous. How come I never logged in, earlier on? Just what you're sharing is gold. Never heard about a feeling chart. I'm definitely going to try that. And displaced emotion, like what appropriate vocabulary. It is fantastic. I had a more like a rational brain type question. What did you mean by the vibrational frequency in meditation being 9.8 hertz? I thought that was, how could you quantify something so abstract?
Yes, well, look, that's a very good question. And I have talked about this in past sessions, sometimes at some length, but you obviously weren't there. But when we understand that everything is energy, that we are energy, that life force is energy, everything in the universe is energy, everything that is living. And so energy vibrates. This is the law of energy. Energy must move, it must vibrate. And so it vibrates at a certain frequency. And that frequency could be anything. A human being, we people, human souls, we have a vibrational frequency. We all have our own vibrational frequency. And the vibrational frequency that flows through the universe it is a healing frequency. It is 9.8 hertz, and we get into that dimension through meditation. And it is also that frequency, that energy frequency. I know this theory of dimensions that I'm talking about can sound a bit sci-fi, but it is the reality, because all energy does have a frequency. And when we get into a particular frequency dimension that has a particular frequency, that frequency, if we spend enough time in it, our own frequency will become aligned with that other frequency. And so in meditation, we aim to go into this dimension of silence, which is the very highest frequency. And when we spend a lot of time in that frequency, our own vibrational frequency comes into alignment with that frequency. And as I said, it is the healing frequency. It is a profoundly healing. It's not the only healing frequency, but it is profoundly healing, but it also opens a can of worms internally. It can do. If there's a can of worms there to be opened, then it will be opened by coming into that frequency, coming into connection with that frequency. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it also makes you very cautious, isn't it? The can of worms. And I did go through an experience like that recently. Everything was, I thought you had some issues at hand and I thought I'd resolved it. And then suddenly somebody came to visit me. And in a matter of, I don't know, they were just here, a family member was here for 48 hours. And I thought, I am feeling so crazy. This person is showering all the love. But you know how your subconscious or unconscious is holding stories that you're not even aware of? Again, as you were saying, from when you were 6 or 8, and nothing very bad, but significant enough for a 6-year-old to hold.
Yes.
So it really makes sense. And I also reflected on the frequency, when you were speaking. It does make sense. I think I had one time read an experiment where they had put in EEG electrodes, so to study brain waves, on people who were learning meditation, and to get into the deeper stages of the alpha, beta, theta, and delta stages. They were teaching people about radical forgiveness, because they studied until most candidates had really forgiven people from the past. They could not enter the deeper stage, and they could quantify it with those EEG waves. So what you were sharing about the vibrational frequency of universe sounded something that I read 5 years ago. So great sharing. Thank you, Jude.
Wow, amazing. Thank you for sharing that little story. It's really interesting.
Pleasure.
Yeah. So anybody else like to say?
Jude.
Yes.
This is Lydia. I wanted to ask, has that got anything to do with the Schumann's resonance? The vibration?
What is the Schumann? I haven't heard about Schumann's.
Oh, right, because I was reading about that yesterday, where they measured the Earth's atmosphere, or the vibration, or the energy of the people on Earth, from the crust to the right up to just before space. I've been reading about the Schumann's resonance. It's called. Look it up. It's really interesting. What's happening now, actually, after the COVID scare, how much it's changed us. And they believe once we get to the optimum, we're going to go to the golden age. Can you believe that? And there wasn't Brahmins. So it was very interesting. Schumann's resonance, it's called.
SCHUMANNS.
Yes, Schumann's. SCHUMANN.
Yep.
I think Schumann's.
Yes.
S.
Yep.
Resonance.
Yep. Got it.
Okay. Thanks.
I will. I'll check it out. Thanks, Lydia. Sounds interesting. Okay, well, if that's all the questions, comments, etc., we shall now have a little meditation to finish the evening with. And just before we have the meditation, just yet another reminder that I will be away for a month. And so we'll have another 2 weeks. And then the 15th of August will be the last session of this lot. And then I'll resume, and I think it's pretty sure it's the 22nd of September that I'll resume. But I will tell you definitely. I'm pretty sure they're the correct dates.
Are you going away on holidays?
Well, not quite. I'm going away up into the north of the remote northwestern Queensland, and I'll be actually making a film up there.
Yes,
So
I remember last week you did mention that.
Yeah. So I'll be staying with a group of Aboriginal people up there in this remote part of Queensland, and so I'll be doing quite a bit of filming up there. So hopefully it will be a bit of a holiday as well, and then we'll be going over to the coast, which is where the top of the Great Barrier Reef, up Townsville, Mackay Way. So it'll be lovely up there, and I'm looking forward to that white sand and beautiful blue water. Okay. So let's have some meditation. And so I just invite you to bring your awareness inside and let go of the day, let go of your thoughts, let go of the environment around you, of anything that's happened that has had a little hold on you, on your mind. Let it go. Let it all fade away. And just bring your awareness into one point inside. And take some deep breaths. And just notice if there are any sensations in the body. And if there are, just breathe into them. Acknowledge them. And let them know that you're not trying to get rid of them, and that you're going to listen to your body from now on. Listen to the sensations in your body and sit with them and let them tell you whatever it is you need to know. And so deep, nice deep breaths with a long out breath. And just allow your awareness to go into the silence and the stillness inside. Into the heart. And feel the energy in your heart. just be at one with that energy. For the heart is the doorway to the silence. And move through that doorway into this beautiful spaciousness. This unlimited part of me. That is filled with silence. And with peace. This beautiful, safe place where I am in complete harmony with myself and with all things. And I enter into the dimension of silence more deeply. And I connect with that beautiful being who fills the silence with power, love, that great divine being who draws me more deeply into the silence. And taking me into the divine presence, the divine heart. And I merge into the silence. And I flow. With this energy. And I become full. Peaceful. Om Shanti.